overwhelmingly won the war. He was also asked, are there any limits on American power? And he said, no, we have no limits. We can do whatever we want around the world. A total strategic misunderstanding egged on by the worst Secretary of Defense we've ever had, Pete Hegseth. This utter misconception that just because you can wreak through bombing more death and destruction on your adversary, you've won the war. Who wreaked more death and destruction in Vietnam, Sam?
We did by a lot.
And who won the war? It wasn't us.
I want to touch on the fact that he signed it also in Versailles. Did you hear that?
No.
He signed this treaty in Versailles, obviously the infamous Treaty of Versailles. Do you want to explain that for a second?
Yes. The Treaty of Versailles was the treaty that ended World War I. And it was not unconditional surrender.
Right.
It was an armistice, but an armistice that imposed a lot of restrictions on Germany, including very heavy reparations, payments, and territorial concessions. Those two factors, the factor that there was no acknowledgement of an unconditional surrender by Germany, and the fact that various punitive measures were meted out against Germany, was critical to the rise of guess who?
Adolf Hitler.
Adolf Hitler, who made a huge issue of Germany being stabbed in the back by the Versailles Treaty. Woodrow Wilson, the American president, went to Versailles to try to implement his 14 points for a democratic, more peaceful world, and was shot down by the European powers. The only thing he really retained was an agreement in the treaty to establish a League of Nations to try to bring the nations of the world together to promote peace. But what happened to the League when he had to get it ratified by the Senate in the U.S.? Do you remember, Sam?
No.
It was shot down. Never got the League approved by a Republican Congress, and suffered a series of strokes going around the country, futilely trying to provoke his League of Nations. So if you want one of the worst models for a peace arrangement, pick the Versailles Treaty at the end of World War I. But of course, Trump has no idea about any of that. He just thinks Versailles is cool because it was the palace of the kings,
right,
and he'd love to be like Louis XIV.
Yikes. So earlier today, I saw this chart that was going around the internet, and it was comparing the 2015 JCPOA, Obama's deal, with the 2026 MOU, the Trump deal. And it looked a little sketchy to me, so to be honest, I put it through AI. I told it to fact check it. I said, check it for accuracy. It did. And then I created my own little graphic comparing the two deals. Do you want to go through that now, or do you want to wait?
No, I think the time has come.
Okay. So
ask not for whom the bell tolls. It tolls for us.
So on the left side is the JCPOA, the 2015 Obama deal. On the right side is the 2026 Memorandum of Understanding, and it compares the two on several categories.
So let's go first. Unfrozen Iranian assets. They're both unfreezing Iranian assets.
Right.
It looks like maybe the JCPOA simply had more Iranian assets to unfreeze, something under 50 billion versus something under 24 billion.
Yeah.
But according to this chart, Sam, half is to be released under the current arrangement, half of the about 24 billion, before final talks conclude. Another gift concession, as if we're paying reparations to Iran in return for nothing.
Right.
And before I get to this, let me give you the big picture.
Okay.
The JCPOA took a year and a half to negotiate. It didn't end Iran's pursuit of a nuclear weapon. That's not possible, but it posed very stringent restrictions on it for anywhere from 15 to 25 years, putting off any even beginning in a serious way to develop a nuclear weapon way down the road. It had the support of our allies and our adversaries. It had broad worldwide support, none of what Trump does has.
Right.
And it had international inspections. That was the crucial element. And at the very time that Trump pulled out of it, his own administration, not the Obama administration, his own administration said the treaty was working. And
Right.
of course, Trump lied about it and also said, well, this is a terrible treaty because it doesn't do anything about Iran's missile program or its support for its proxies. Well, what does this memorandum of understanding do about Iran's missile program or its proxies?
Nothing that I've seen.
Nothing. Zero. And as we'll see, at this point, because they've kicked the can down the road and we have no agreement, it's much worse than JCPOA.
You know what's interesting is last episode we both said that. We said there's actually nothing, when people were unsure why the deal wasn't released, et cetera, we were saying because there's nothing really to this. And then they evolve it to being, well, it's not a deal, it's a memorandum of understanding.
But it's worse than nothing.
Right.
As my former student, the brilliant foreign policy analyst, said, it's as if we lost the war and are paying reparations to Iran.
Right.
And we're getting virtually nothing back.
Let's continue down this list.
All right. This is really important. This is the nuclear stuff.
Right.
Uranium stockpile.
Uh-huh.
The JCPOA under Obama, 98% reduction. Remember, this is all enforced, and the enforcement was working. What do we get under the memorandum of agreement? Nothing. Unresolved. Subject of 60-day follow-on talks. Enrichment program. Capped under the JCPOA under Obama, 3.7%, well below what they need for a nuclear weapon. And guess what? Under the framework that Trump worked out, nothing. Unresolved. Strait of Hormuz. Before the war, open, no tolls. Now, after killing thousands of Iranians, including many civilians and school children, 100 days ago, and by the way, we're still investigating. They can investigate that forever until they believe people will forget about it.
Right.
Any rate, the strait is reopened, but on a disputed basis because Iran claims that it's going to be able to control the strait and collect fees after the 60 days, making that situation worse off than it was before the war. U.S. service members killed under the JCPOA 0. Under Trump's war, 13 to 15. U.S. service members wounded under Obama, JCPOA 0. Under Trump, his war, we really don't know because the Pentagon keeps shifting, but somewhere between 373 and 538. The direct U.S. cost, no separate tally under the JCPOA, and the cost of Trump's war, the Pentagon says $25 to $35 billion plus. Independent analysts say it could rise as high as $100 billion.
Yikes.
Yeah. Reconstruction fund for Iraq, none.
Iran,
None under the JCPOA. $300 billion reported. $300 billion windfall, perhaps.
I thought that was Trump's whole thing about the first deal is
Yes.
that, Iran was getting cash sent directly to their pockets. What the hell is this $300 billion doing? Isn't
Yes.
it? Aren't you sending it directly to the IRGC basically at this
Yeah.
point?
Plus the unfreezing.
Right.
That's more billions.
Right.
Global impact on the global economy, minimal under the JCPOA. Depending on the estimates, anywhere from about 600 billion to 3.5 trillion in lost economic growth worldwide.
Right. I was seeing Trump saying recently that, well, he had to stop it because, he didn't want economic disaster. Well, that's why you don't start it in the
Why'd you
first
start
place.
it? Yes, exactly. U.S. inflation effect, JCPOA under Obama, none of any significance.
Right.
Under Trump, 0.2 to 0.4 points. That may not seem like a lot, but it
Mhm.
is.
It is.
Yeah, that's a big impact. That, moves the inflation level above the target of the Federal Reserve, well above. And there's now talk that they may even raise interest rates. At the latest meeting, they did not lower interest rates, as Trump would hope his appointee to head the Fed would do. And there's even talk, Sam, that the Fed is going to raise
Right.
interest rates, putting a damper on home sales, putting a damper on the overall economy. The bottom line seems to be this was one of the most ill considered wars in the history of the United States. And there's been plenty of ill considered wars, let me
Right.
tell you. Uh, it is the most unpopular war early on in the history of the country. It seems to have accomplished nothing but death and destruction, and may well leave the world and the U.S. in a worse position
Crazy.
than before we started the war. Is that crazy?
So if you look at this chart, right, and you look at
Yes.
section by section, the Trump deal loses on every single front. There's not a single category that the Trump deal wins on. I mean, the 24
Except the
billion.
unfrozen Iranian
But that's
assets.
right, but that's only supposed to be half.
That's
So
right.
if it's double, then
Yeah.
that's basically the same as the Obama. So it's
Right.
like they lose or they're the same on one. They lose in every other category. I mean, that's a massive disaster, no?
That's why my former student, one of our leading foreign policy analysts, Robert Kagan, has said it's as if we lost the war and, like Germany after World War I, are paying reparations to the winner and getting essentially nothing back in return.
Costly in the chat makes a good point. They say OPEC wins. That's an interesting point.
Yes,
honestly.
of course it does.
Right,
And Russia wins, China wins,
right.
America loses. One of the most ill-considered military operations in the history of the country. Obviously not the most destructive. Other wars have gone on much longer and been more destructive. But in terms of how misbegotten and misunderstood this war was from the start, it's certainly one of the worst, at least in Vietnam, for example. Was popular early on, and it had a rationale. We want to keep the expansion of communism down. The Iraq War had a rationale, right? We want to deal with Saddam Hussein, who might be developing weapons of mass destruction.
Well,
that proved not to be
Right, they were
true.
lying about that.
Yes, but at least there was a surface justification. Surface justification for the war in Afghanistan, right? We wanted to get rid of the Taliban because they were harboring the Al-Qaeda terrorists responsible for the 9/11 attack. So at least, as bogus as some of these were, at least on the surface, there was a plausible rationale. There was none, absolutely none in this case.
Yeah, and one thing this chart doesn't mention is the death and destruction that has happened to the Iranian people. I mean, that's caused a massive toll on humanity in and of itself.
Yes, but they revel in that. They think that's how you measure victory. How many people you killed, how much of their infrastructure you destroyed. And a good number of those are civilians, including the world believes something on the order of 150 school children killed by an American missile 100 days ago. And they're still investigating, quote, unquote. Come on. Just like they're investigating the homicides of the 2 American citizens in Minneapolis. This is their MO. Drag it out forever. Deflect, delay until people lose interest.
Now, we've talked about this a little bit, but I mean, obviously at this point, going into this war was buku bananas, right? Do you think it was just Trump and his administration thinking, oh, we could go in and, meet all our objectives in a few days like we did in Venezuela and just move on, and then they got caught and then they got scared? Or is there some other explanation?
I think you're right. I think, first of all, they don't have competent people advising them. Certainly, Hegseth is the worst Secretary of Defense we've ever had, the most unqualified, the most bloodthirsty So they didn't have good advice. And yes, I think they were mesmerized by what they saw in Venezuela. They thought they could, bring the Iranian Islamic regime to its knees and
Right.
get what they wanted. And, let me recapitulate. Virtually nothing of Trump's war objectives were achieved. No regime change in Iraq. He claims, there is a regime change because it's different people. It's even more hardline people in the same Islamic regime. We did not destroy their missile capacity. His own intelligence community says it's still 70 to 75% intact. We did not destroy their infrastructure capable of rebuilding their capacity. We did not in any way stop them from supporting their proxies. We did not get any concrete agreement on the nuclear program. So absolutely zero of Donald Trump's objectives were achieved.
Kevin W. says Bibi Netanyahu also convinced him to do it. Do you buy that?
I think there's something to that. It's hard to know without, the declassified information. Let me say, too, Bibi is a big lump in this gravy because Iran keeps saying, we're going to make no commitments so long as Israel is still attacking Lebanon.
Right.
So this is an excuse for them during the 60-day period to agree to nothing. Say, look, we were quite clear. We made any agreement contingent on Israel stopping its war against Lebanon. And there's no sign they're doing that.
Right.
And that could well be, would not surprise me one bit, that becomes a justification for Iran to agree to nothing of any substance in the next 60 days while taking at least a nominal control over the strait, which they did not have before the war.
It says very clearly in the memorandum that the cease of fighting includes Lebanon.
Includes Lebanon, and the Iranian officials have made that. Crystal clear. It's a huge Achilles heel in this whole agreement because it enables Iran to worm out of anything by simply saying this is null and void because Israel is still invading Lebanon.
You saw, Trump is still fairly soft on Netanyahu and Israel. He's been, the other day at the G7, he said a few things like, I think Bibi's maybe doing too much, but he's still treating him with kid gloves. Today, J.D. Vance really did sort of take a strong line against Israel and Bibi Netanyahu. I'm not sure if you saw that.
No, but J.D. Vance has never been 100% on this war program.
Sure, yeah.
He sort of had to because he's the vice president, and he had to go along, but it was quite clear that he was not a supporter of this war.
Right.
He just reluctantly, was begrudgingly by a team of oxen pulled into it.
Now, I understand the administration was riding off a high of Venezuela. I know it's led by warmongers like Hegseth. I know they're incompetent. But to me, it feels like there's another level of stupidity that it's almost hard to wrap my mind around. They thought that they could achieve the same thing they did in Venezuela in Iran, who has probably quadruple the economy of Venezuela, 90 million people, a big army. That just
and it's a very entrenched regime.
Yeah, I know it's almost so stupid, and trust me, I think the Trump administration is stupid, but it's almost so stupid that it's hard to believe.
It is hard to believe, but so much of what Trump does
yeah,
is truly hard to believe. And let me add one thing that I didn't mention.
Uh-oh.
This is really important in terms of Trump's failure to achieve objectives. Remember, he said, "We've got your back" to the protesters, right?
Right.
We're here for you.
Yeah.
And what did he do? What did this war do for the protesters?
Nothing.
They're worse off.
Yeah, their homes are destroyed. Their infrastructure.
The back of the protest is broken. So we've got your back. We're going to break your back.
Right. And all this money, again, is just going to the Islamic regime. So
to strengthen it. It's not going to the protesters.
Exactly.
It's not being distributed to the people of Iran.
Should we do a poll who won this deal?
Yes.
U.S. or Iran?
Yes, a good idea.
I mean, I feel like we've made the case pretty clear.
But, our audience is very smart. They're independent. They don't necessarily just follow along with us.
I have a feeling it's going to be very heavily in Iran's favor.
I don't see how it could not be. I have, except for Trump, I have yet to see even Republicans, even Ted Cruz, about as right wing a Republican as you're going to get, has blasted
But the issue with a lot of these
disagreement.
but the issues with a lot of these Republicans in Congress is they're war hawks, so they hate this, that they're not able to fight Iran anymore.
Right. Well, it satisfies nobody.
Right, basically, yeah.
Yeah, the war hawks and the Trump critics like Tom Tillis and Bill Cassidy.
The taco word sort of makes me pause sometimes because it seems like we're celebrating, right? But like this is a disaster.
Disaster. A worldwide disaster.
It's like Trump tacoed, haha. It's like we entered a war that we shouldn't have. A bunch of people died. The good news is we're out of it. That's the good news. But there's so much disaster that has come with this. It feels weird almost like using that acronym because it feels celebratory in a way, and there's nothing to celebrate.
There's nothing and I don't celebrate
except
when
for the
I
fact
say
that
taco.
I do want to make it clear there is something to celebrate. At least the bombing and the death and destruction
Yes,
for
that
now
is to be celebrated.
Done.
I'm sure Hegseth is
but the whole
weeping over that.
Right, but the whole point is we should have never even been in this position in the first place. The Trump administration should never put us in this war, and we never should have caused this death and destruction in the Middle East.
Absolutely not. There's an old saying that's what some people learn from history is that they learn nothing from history.
Right.
And that certainly applies to Trump, who I'm not sure knows any history, has any understanding of what's going on in the Middle East, and has no understanding. This is even worse in a sense, because this transcends the Middle East. He has no strategic sense. He has no humanity. If you're going to kill thousands of people, you better have a darn good reason, an uplifting reason to do it. They seem to be doing it just for its own sake, and that's horrible.
You know what the sad part is? I think his understanding of the Middle East essentially comes from Fox News.
Fox News and maybe Netanyahu.
Right. A lot of his understanding of the world, unfortunately, comes from Fox News. I mean, it's been reported that he's like addicted to cable news and he just sits there all day watching it. So unfortunately, Sean Hannity and Jesse Waters are probably informing the president on how to deal with the Middle East, which is a terrifying thought.
Oh my God, yes. Talk to Bob Kagan if you want some good advice, and I think he may even be a Republican. I'm not sure. He's no big radical.
All right, real quick before we get to questions, we've got 3 topics. Which one do you want to talk about? The DC mayor thing. We can just mention that Louis George won.
Yeah, we can deal with that quickly.
The primary in DC for mayor, which sets her up to become the first Democratic Socialist mayor of the nation's capital.
Yeah. And, I hate that label, Democratic Socialist. They are
Really?
not Democratic Socialists. A socialist believes in government ownership of the means of production. Bernie Sanders doesn't advocate that. George doesn't advocate that. They are social democrats along the lines of the Scandinavian countries, in that they believe in a stronger role of the government in regulating the economy and providing welfare aid. But that's not socialism. And I've been pounding this for 10 years and nobody seems to listen. And Trump has threatened all kinds of horrible things if she becomes mayor. I think, again, he's going to taco out.
Right. He threatened to seize control of the city should Louis George be elected. He said that before she was elected. Can you imagine? Like, Trump has said and done so many ridiculous things. If any president before him had said that they were going to seize control of a U.S. city who fairly and freely elected their mayor, I mean, it'd be the biggest scandal ever, but it just blows over people's heads.
Blows by, yes.
It's crazy.
Scandal 1,452.
Oh, my God. Our final topic, do you want to talk about the people charged in Minnesota
Yes.
or the ballroom budget? Which one?
Minnesota.
Okay. Federal prosecutors have charged 15 people with impeding the Trump administration's massive immigration crackdown in Minnesota, accusing them of coordinating efforts to block arrest and deportations.
It's part of a conspiracy against the U.S. government. Well, as far as I was able to discern,
Right.
the Trump administration was engaged in a conspiracy against the people
Right.
of Minneapolis, including 2 homicides,
Yep.
2 killings of U.S. citizens, unarmed. When we seen the footage, not threatening, they said Alex Preddy was out to kill lots of ICE agents. I guess he was going to do it with his phone, because that's the only thing he had in his hand. And the investigations, of course, have gone nowhere. This is a clear act of revenge and intimidation. I don't think it's going to stick. And we've seen this time and time again. The Trump administration abusing the Department of Justice and the FBI for its political agenda. And this is one of the worst examples of that.
With that, we will move on to the question portion of our show. Before we do that, some quick housekeeping. We have over 600 people watching, but only 200 likes.
What?
Make sure you like the stream. It helps us a lot. Subscribe if you're not subscribed. Turn on that notification bell so you know we're live. Share our videos. Share our episodes. Remember, we are independent, pro-democracy media in a time where media is becoming more conglomerated, more corporate, and in the control of the few. So please support us. Remember that members and donators get priority on the question portion of our show.
Yeah, not being corporate, we depend upon you on your small, $20, $50, $100 donations.
$1,000. Give us $1,000.
$1,000. Yeah, that's peanuts compared to what? The Ellisons or Disney, or I don't know if it's Bezos or Bezos, but
the great Bezos versus
Right.
Bezos debate continues. I think we solved that in a previous episode.
I think we did, and I don't care.
Okay. This is our first question, which is
Let's get to the poll
Oh,
before we get to the questions. How about that?
we only have 147 votes in the poll, so
let's hold. Come
we'll
on,
hold
vote in the poll.
we'll vote for a little.
But we're way behind on donators, so that's where we really need the help.
Our first question is from a kind donator. Are you the keymaster? They say. Retiring GOP politicians Tillis, Cassidy, Cornyn have begun criticizing Trump more freely. Do you think their words still carry weight with anybody?
Probably not with other Republicans, but I think they do carry some weight with the American people. Yeah, they may not be up for re-election. Trump may have targeted them, but they're still conservatives. These aren't a bunch of, Bernie Sanders Republicans. These are still conservative Republicans.
Bernie Sanders Republicans, have those ever existed?
Of course not.
Okay.
But you get my point.
Right, okay.
They're not even Lisa Murkowski Republicans.
Right. Our next
They're pretty down the line conservatives. So no, they're not going to persuade a lot of people, but any Republican voice is welcome.
Someone just texted me saying people seem to be boycotting the poll because there's no neither category. Should we try it again?
Yeah, try it again.
Okay. I'll send you
That's a good point.
I'll send this question
See,
to
we're
you.
very responsive to our smart audience.
I'll send this question your way and then I'll fix it. This
Okay.
is from Free Throw Guy 22. Does the Iran deal and failure make Taiwan more attainable to China?
100% yes. I've been saying this for a long time, that Russia and China are two of the big winners for various reasons. And one of the reasons is this makes Taiwan much more vulnerable to China. I'm not convinced that China wants to invade Taiwan. I've been to Taiwan. It's an amazing, dynamic country with a very strong military. It is no pushover whatsoever. So I'm not convinced, and maybe nobody knows. I mean, who knows what's going on in the inner sanctum of the Chinese dictatorship. But I'm not convinced that they want to invade Taiwan. But if they do, and I'm not saying they do, certainly they're in a much stronger position because of what Trump has done, which has weakened American power, hard power, and soft power all over the world.
Taiwan also
That's another consequence we really haven't discussed very much.
Taiwan also has two of my favorite filmmakers, Edward Yang and Ho So Shen. I'm not sure if
can
you're
they
familiar
hold
with
off the mainland?
them. Edward Yang is dead.
Oh,
The other guy's still alive.
oh,
Maybe
good.
he did make a movie once called The Assassin, so
Yeah.
maybe he's got assassins on his side. This is from the Switchboard. Would you say China is now the world's top superpower over the U.S.? They have insane clean energy generation now, so they don't even need the oil that Iran is now going to gouge us with.
That's a very difficult judgment because there are no clear, objective benchmarks. So I can't definitively answer it for you, but let me say Taiwan mainland China has certainly become a major rival, the most important rival of the U.S. for dominance. But so far, their dominance, is pretty much limited to the Far East. I've said this before. If Trump has any vision, I'm not sure he has any other than enriching himself, it might be to divide the world into three spheres: Asia controlled by China, Europe controlled by Russia, and the Western Hemisphere controlled by the U.S.
I don't think he's that gracious. I think he wants to control it all, to be honest.
Who knows?
I want to thank Sally for gifting 5 memberships.
Oh, that's really nice.
We really appreciate that a lot,
Yes,
Sally.
we do.
Thank you. This is from member Patrick Murray.
One of our great friends.
A historic black graveyard in Florida was vandalized by smashing tombstones and spray painting, quote, Trump and, quote, DeSantis on them. Sorry. Spray painting, graffitiing pro DeSantis is so lame and ridiculous. It made me laugh. I wasn't laughing at the vandalism itself. Southern states put up voting barriers, defend the Confederacy, and are trying to eliminate black representation in Congress. Why is the South not over slavery? What's their end goal?
Well, they may be over slavery, but they've never been over white supremacy. Let's not forget, when slavery was smashed, it was replaced by the utterly misnamed redemption of the South by white supremacists. It was not redemption, it was recapture. And to their own benefit, their own economic, political benefit, you got to always ask who benefits. They imposed Jim Crow, discrimination on the South, almost as bad as apartheid in South Africa. And that lasted until well into the 20th century. And those attitudes on support of the white power structure, that they benefit from suppressing the aspirations of black people, have deep historical roots and have never disappeared. They're now Republicans, whereas they were Democrats during Jim Crow, but it's the same attitude. Barry Goldwater, the extreme right-wing Republican candidate for president in 1964, won 4 Deep South states for the first time since Reconstruction, and said, in rebuilding the Republican Party, we have to go where the ducks are. And the ducks were in the segregationist South.
Quack, quack. Am I right?
You're right.
Dr. Lichtman, the war the war in Ukraine has now gone on longer than World War I. Wow. Do you think Ukraine will be longer than World War II? How will we end this disaster war?
It is a disaster to everyone concerned. But, I've got to give some props to a guy who, even from his own party, has just taken a huge beating, most of it unjustified, and that's President Joe Biden. Everybody thought, not everybody, but the smart money was on the idea that Russia, in a very short period of time, maybe in a matter of weeks, would roll over the Ukrainians and take over the entire country. Why didn't that happen? Because of Joe Biden. It was Joe Biden who put together the coalition of the West that stepped up to support Ukraine and prevented this big conquest. War's now been going on for years and seems to be turning in Ukraine's favor. So, it wasn't Merkel, wasn't Trudeau, it was Biden who put together the coalition that stopped Russia cold. And I'm hard-pressed to see how this war is going to end unless Putin gets deposed, which I don't think is impossible, or dies.
Do you think if Biden or Harris had become president, they would have ended the war by now in Ukraine?
You know, I hate
Okay, that's too hypothetical.
speculation on hypotheticals.
But we know Trump.
But you know, I've always thought, you know, what a raw deal Biden got from his own party. I'd never seen.
Well, we know Trump offered or promised to end the war on day one in office, and the war is still raging on. So that
What
didn't
has he
happen.
been, 500 days in office or something like that?
He loves Putin. Why would he try? Why would he stop Putin? He loves
Right,
him.
and we've talked about that before. Every time he drew a red line for Putin, what did he do? Backed off.
Yeah. This is from member Diane Kastner. They say, I just saw an interview with Raphael Warnock, whom I greatly admire.
You'll know who he is, right?
Senator from Georgia.
Black senator from Georgia, one of the few black senators.
He has a new book. Also, what do you think of John Ossoff's chances this fall? And what about his MAGA opponent?
Well, he's going to get smeared like every MAGA does. Ossoff is very well respected, even across the aisles. Georgia is a toss-up state, but I do think this is going to be a Democratic year. And again, I don't have a system for predicting this, but my gut tells me Ossoff will survive. But that's, you know, just my gut, just a guess. Don't go and, you know, put all your money in Kalshi. What does Kalshi say about that? Can you find out quickly?
I'll look that up while we
Yeah.
take the next question.
That's interesting.
You know, thinking back to Ukraine, it's pretty sad where we were and, you know, where we are now. You know, Trump promised no new wars and that he was going to end the Ukraine war in a day. Ukraine war is still raging.
And it would bring down prices drastically.
Well, I'm specifically talking about foreign policy. Where the war in Iran is still raging, and then he started another war in the meantime. So it couldn't have gone in a more opposite direction.
And the war in Gaza is not over, despite what Trump might tell you.
I think so.
1,000 people have been killed since the so-called ceasefire in Gaza.
This is from Comic Fan. They say that they think Trump is planning to invade Cuba. Do you think it would be more like Venezuela or Iran if he did invade Cuba?
Yeah, I don't want to speculate. It wouldn't surprise me. You know, he goes from one thing to another to create distractions. It's much closer to Venezuela than Iran. It's a much smaller country than Iran. Doesn't have, you know, the kind of population or infrastructure or military capacity that Iran does.
And it's pretty economically depressed as well.
It's a disaster economically.
Right.
And it's, you know, got a fraction of the people of Iran.
According to Kalshi right now, the Georgia Senate winner, 84% say Ossoff, only 16% say Mike Collins.
So they agree with me.
I thought the other guy won.
No, Mike Collins.
Mike Collins
he
won?
was the Trump guy.
Oh, he's the
and he
Trump
won.
guy. Yeah. Yeah, Ossoff's way ahead.
Yeah. So I hadn't seen that. It was my independent judgment.
Wow, you're an independent kind of guy, huh?
Yep. How's our poll?
We have 184 votes.
Not very many.
Keep voting in the poll, guys. We want to hear your
Yeah.
thoughts. This is from Carla. They say, I feel like Trump will claim this as a victory because Iran, quote, agreed to not continue their nuclear weapons program. What do you think?
Oh, on his interview with Axios, he said they unconditionally surrendered.
Right, he's already claiming it's
He's already
a victory.
claiming victory. And by the way, for 40 years, they have been saying they have no intention to build a nuclear weapon. So you can take that declaration, and if you believe it, buy my big bridge in my hometown of Brooklyn.
Really?
Yep.
Okay.
It's about as plausible as putting your faith in that declaration.
$5 donation from Kumar. Thank you. They say, hey, Dr. Lichtman, do you think Iran gets all $300 billion, or do you think Trump proposed that amount so he can dip in and grab some for himself?
I have no doubt. Well, certainly from what I know about Trump, and I don't have inside information, he absolutely intends to dip into that fund for himself. and his family. Whether it actually ever amounts to 300 billion, who knows? I suspect not, but I suspect he's got his fingers deeply embedded in that pie.
Trump Tower, Tehran coming soon.
Oh God.
Can you imagine?
Well, during the campaign, get this, during the campaign of 2016, he was actively promoting Trump Tower in Moscow, of all places.
Didn't he thank Putin at some point in the last couple of days for this memorandum? He just randomly, he was thanking people for getting this memorandum done, and
Did
he
thank
thanked.
Putin?
I thought I saw
I'm
some
not sure.
clip of that or
I
some
haven't
report
heard
of that
but wouldn't
he
surprise me.
randomly thanked Vladimir Putin. It was like,
Wouldn't
huh?
surprise me.
Why do some Egyptians today look back on Hosni Mubarak's rule more favorably than they did during the 2011 revolution? And what does that tell us about how people evaluate political leaders?
Well, of course, the so-called Arab Spring kind of never realized its promise. So there is some nostalgia. I'm no expert on Egyptian politics, but there is some nostalgia for the earlier strongman rule. And, they believe Mubarak did accomplish some important things for Egypt.
Back to that $300 billion conspiracy theory, I would say it's unlikely that he's just going to dip his finger right in and take it. But I could see him, rebuilding Iran with all this new oil and gas infrastructure. And now suddenly America is very involved in oil production and exportation in Iran, et cetera, et
Yeah,
cetera.
all kinds of deals for companies associated with himself and his family, just as he's done already, steering government contracts, no bid contracts to companies that are associated with his family or his organization.
I mean, he has explicitly said, whether he was joking or not, that's what they always say. Oh, Trump's just joking. But he did explicitly say that he wants to turn Gaza into the new Riviera.
I wrote a whole column about that, yes. Understand a couple of things about Trump as a real estate mogul. Number one, it's been decades since he's built anything. What has he done instead of building, Sam?
Just sold his name.
Just sold his name. Number two, do his projects help ordinary people?
What?
They're all for the mega rich.
What?
These high scale projects that nobody except his rich friends can afford. And I would add a third, that so many of his projects, Trump Tower, Tampa, Fort Lauderdale, his project in Puerto Rico and Canada, have all gone bust. Trump walks away unscathed. It's only the investors who get hurt.
Back to the Gaza Riviera thing, even if he was joking, if he could, he would.
Oh, of course he would. That's what he does.
Right. This is a $10 donation. Thank you very much from the Mad Hatter Forever 23.
We like the Mad Hatter.
How often do historians consult and even critique Hollywood film and TV productions when it comes to in-depth details of specific eras? And have you ever worked on any historical fiction movies/shows?
I've worked on the History Channel a lot, but that's not fiction stuff. That's more documentaries. I can't recall that I've actually worked on a fiction show. But I always tell people, if you're going to get your history from the movies, you deserve what you get. It is not the role of the movies to be documentaries. I mean, there are some, but fiction movies are not documentaries. They don't have to be historically accurate. They don't even have to be historically accurate to be moving and significant.
This is from Alex Kawa. They say, now that Louis George has been declared the winner in D.C., that means both the nation's capital and the largest city will have Democratic Socialist mayors. It's likely not a fluke. So do you think this is a good or bad thing for the country?
Well, we'll see. Mamdani in New York has just been mayor for a few months. George has not been sworn in yet. So the book is open on whether this is going to be good for these cities or not.
While I agree, and obviously it's just a fact that Mamdani just started, he's been pretty popular so far.
Yeah. I said right away, remember when when he got nominated. I said, foolish, foolish Democrats, spineless. Instead of attacking him because he's too radical, learn from him. Learn why he is able to spark such enthusiasm in New York, and Chuck Schumer is not.
Chuck Schumer.
Chuck Schumer is not.
This is an €11.99 donation from Lewis Lowhouse. Thank you very much. They say, what do you think of Hillary Clinton calling Biden's run in 24 a, quote, terrible mistake, while she already endorsed a re-election effort back in 2022? Luis thinks that it's cheap and not helpful.
You know what's a terrible mistake? Opening your mouth.
Oh!
These after-the-fact criticisms
Right.
and analysis are worth about as much as my empty bottle of soda.
Wow.
And worse yet, they never do any good. They just give grounds for critiquing both the person who opens their mouth and their target. I wish they would stop it. You heard me rail against this Democratic National Committee postmortem. These things are useless. You can't prove anything, and they only give the other side ammunition and cause divisiveness within your own party. Shut up about it.
Everybody's
And I'm an admirer of Hillary. I'm a friend of Hillary's. So this is friendly advice, although it may not sound like it.
Everybody's a genius when you can make takes after the fact.
Yes, I remember I was doing a prediction show, and one of my good buddies gets up and says, I am much better than Dr. Lichtman at predictions because I only predict elections after they've happened.
Right. I think the New York Knicks will win the 2026 NBA championship.
Wow, you're like a genius.
This is from member Brian Sheehan. Oh, I wanted to mention, too, I saw somebody gifted more memberships. I forgot to mention. I think it was John Thier. Yes, John Thier. Thank you for gifting a membership. We appreciate that.
How is our poll doing? Still a bust.
We have 267 votes.
Oh, that's better.
Right now, who won this deal? 6% say the U.S., 83% say Iran, and 11% say neither.
Well,
that tells you.
That tells you. Just like I'm right in tune with Kalshi, I'm right in tune with our brilliant audience.
Right.
How much more time do we have?
It is 9:56.
So 2 more questions.
2 more questions. Michelle. Michelle just gave $50 donation. We really appreciate that.
We got to answer her question.
Well, she asked a question that we've already answered.
Okay.
She said Trump said if the Socialist Democrat wins in D.C., he'll take over the government. What are your thoughts? Yeah, rewind a little bit, Michelle. We talked about that. Thank you so much for your donation. This is from Brian Sheehan. Trump losing the Iran war, I feel, just confirms my theory a month ago about aggressors usually lose in modern wars. Have you guys discussed the Lego scandal at all?
We did briefly discuss the Lego scandal, but you seem to be more on top of it, Sam, than I am.
Yeah, the one about bricks and minifigs?
This is about the propaganda from Iran using Legos.
Oh, that?
Yeah,
I'm
I
not
think
sure
that's what I'm not sure what he's referring to.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you're in the chat, Brian.
But let's look at the bigger question.
Okay, the bigger question.
You're absolutely right. It is very difficult in the modern era to win a war against a seemingly vulnerable, less developed nation because you're fighting on unfamiliar, unforgiving terrain. You're fighting usually against the hostility of the local people. You don't have the right kind of weaponry to win the war. Eisenhower said it way back in the 1950s. And I'm an Eisenhower fan.
Right.
Even though he's a Republican, he said, we cannot solve these problems by military force. That's why he resisted using military force to support the French in Indochina. That's why he resisted using military force when Abdul Nasser of Egypt seized the Suez Canal. That's why generally he avoided using military force in the Middle East. You know, he was one of our great generals, and one of his great legacies is, unlike the blowhard Trump who violated it, he really did keep us out of war.
All right, our final question of the evening goes to member Michael Gonzalez. And if you want your question in line on our question portion of the show, all you got to do is become a member or donate.
A donator.
A donator.
Yes.
Professor, who do you consider to be the most interesting man to become president? For me, Michael, I would have to go with Richard Nixon.
Oh, God.
He's the most
You want to go the most twisted?
Yeah, I don't know about
Yeah.
interesting.
Probably the most interesting is Teddy Roosevelt.
Mm.
You know, he was an explorer. He was a rancher. You know, he was a warrior. You know, he put together the Rough Riders in Cuba. He was a scholar. He wrote lots of books. He held boxing matches in the White House. You know, he was certainly the most interesting man of in the world at his time. You know, there are lots of other candidates too, obviously, Abraham Lincoln, Franklin Roosevelt, John Kennedy. But if I had to pick someone arbitrarily, I pick Teddy Roosevelt.
I think that's a good pick.
Yeah.
On a positive note, this is from our resident Giant and Knick fan, James LaGruta. They said that they were at the Knicks parade, and they said it was a pretty cool experience being downtown during the Knicks parade. The team's first ever ticker taper parade. What does that mean?
Ticker tape parade.
What does that mean?
That means they throw confetti from the high up office buildings on the crowd.
Yeah.
It's called a ticker tape parade, reserved for the greatest of celebrities like Charles Lindbergh when he flew across the Atlantic.
Right.
I saw a really interesting YouTube about one of the guys who doesn't get quite the same attention as Cat or Josh Hart or Jalen Brunson. You know who I'm talking about?
No.
OG
Anunoby.
He's the quiet guy.
Right.
Doesn't promote himself, answers questions, you know, very calmly, very tersely, doesn't attack anyone, doesn't cause a lot of attention, but he may be the best two-way player in basketball.
Right.
He's probably the best defender and certainly has emerged in these playoffs as one of the best offensive weapons, averaging 20 points on over 50% field goal range and over 45%, I believe, three-point. It's a guy I really admire. He's done a lot of good things. You know, his heritage is Nigerian, I believe, but he's from London and he's promoted sports in England. He's lived a tragic life. Both of his parents died young. He's a pretty amazing guy.
I said when the Knicks first got him that he was already my favorite Knick player.
Yeah.
I called it years ago.
For good reason.
Did you see on Good Morning America, people were saying that he was high because he was like sitting there all like out of it and stuff?
That's what he does.
Yeah, I guess
he doesn't call attention to himself.
Yeah.
He doesn't say anything dumb either.
Yeah.
Never.
No, he was answering the questions pretty
intelligently, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, hey, like I said, he's been my favorite Knick basically since they got him. So
he's their best two-way player.
I've always been an OG fan.
Maybe the best two-way player in the league.
You know what his name stands for? It's we looked this up the other day. Now I can't remember. Agugwa. Agugwa. Yeah, Agugwa. So shout out to Agugwa.
I don't want to have to say that too many times.
Right.
All right, last check on our poll.
Okay, last check on our poll.
I'm sure it hasn't changed much.
Yeah, I don't think it's changed a single percentage point.
Yeah.
313 votes.
That's a pretty good sample.
Yeah.
86%.
Let's see how many. Let's see if we can get any. If you're watching, get a quick vote in. Let's see if we can get this vote total up.
And get a like in.
Get a like in while you're at it. And if you're not subscribed, subscribe while you're at it. And if you're not a member, become a member while you're at it. And if you haven't donated, donate while you're at it. And if
Still time.
How was that? Was that a good promotion?
That's pretty good. You should be a carnival
315,
guy.
315. We got 2 more votes.
All right.
All right.
Hasn't moved, huh?
Hasn't moved. I'll end it there. With the final poll, we have who won this deal? 84% say Iran, 10%. Oh, it did move at the very end there. We got 317 total votes. 84% say Iran, 10% say neither. Only 6% say the U.S. That's
and I don't
rough.
think that's because we have a biased audience.
No.
I mean, we do. Obviously, our audience is not a bunch of MAGA
I wouldn't say
folks.
they're biased. I
They're
would
not
say,
biased.
they have their own
They have
political
their own
leanings.
political views, which
Yeah.
are not MAGA.
Right.
But they don't always vote, in that direction. We've
Right.
gotten, lots of interesting votes that you wouldn't necessarily expect. So I have
Right.
enormous respect for our audience.
Okay, with that, Dad, what are your final words to the people?
Listen to my former student, Bob Kagan. We did not win this war. It's as if we are the losers paying reparations. We're worse off than when we started.
God.
After killing all these people, trashing the world economy, it's really, really sad. But, you get who you elected. And, can't say for a year or two we weren't issuing the warnings.
That's pretty bleak. On a positive note, even though FIFA is corrupt, the World Cup is going on. It's been pretty magical here in the U.S.
It has. You turned me on to it.
He's now a big football fan.
Yeah, I'd never watched it before, but Sam's got me turned. It's really interesting.
Yeah, and the
US
U.S.
tomorrow.
So go USA. We will see you guys next week, right? Today's Thursday. Yes. We'll see you next week, and good night.